shut the door before we get started. And we will probably end a little bit early just to give you a little bit more time to talk to our graduates. But for the summer, what we usually try to do is, because so many of us are in and out, we're traveling, is we just try to pick kind of some different random topics that might be interesting to talk about. As a class, you have different teachers, so I know Clark and I definitely will be teaching you this summer some. We may have some other folks volunteer that may teach as well. But this is an opportunity for me as well to use you guys as guinea pigs. I teach the teenagers on Wednesday nights, so we have a variety of topics we talk about with them. We're going to be starting some new things over the summer, and this happens to be one of the topics I'm going to talk to the teenagers about. So we're going to, this is an important topic for us as adults. It's good for us to check from time to time, what we're consuming, what we're watching on TV. But I think it's certainly an important thing for teenagers. So today I'm going to get some ideas from you. You're going to help me be an even better teacher here in a week or two with some of the comments that you have to share. And then many of you are parents as well. You've had kids. You've had to go through this about giving them advice and telling them things about what they should or shouldn't be watching. So I'll be curious to hear if you have advice for that as well. Maybe there's some things I can share, like I said, in a week or two with the teens as I teach them. So this morning I had kind of the topic, the Bible and digital entertainment. I didn't know what to put up there as far as digital entertainment because there's so much stuff on the internet now, I don't know exactly how to classify what. So this morning I'm kind of talking about when you're watching streaming services, like if you're watching TV, we're talking about that. If you're watching, kids, I don't know if you've heard about TikTok, some of those different things that you can watch and see things that are posted. So I'm talking a little bit more about passively what you're watching when you go to the internet to watch something. So not necessarily Facebook or things that you're texting, because I'll cover that later in another one. But what are you deciding to watch, right? And I put the question up there. I first started out writing the question, what's the question we want to ask? Is what I'm watching okay? And I thought, well, that's not quite what I want to ask. I want to ask, is what I'm watching pleasing to God? Because I want to continue to have that as part of the question that we ask throughout the summer. Is this pleasing to God? Because that's really what we're trying to get after, is being pleasing to God in everything. So is what I'm watching pleasing to God? So I thought I'd try to find some statistics out there on how much we as Americans spend time on watching TV. I don't think this is probably a shock to anyone. We spend a lot of time watching TV. I was surprised I didn't share this one, but when you look across the globe, they actually track statistics. We're actually not the highest TV watchers. There are some in, I think it's Asia and South America, that are much higher than us, which kind of blows me away, because I would think we would top off the chart. But if you look at the chart up there, it says on average, how many hours of TV do you watch each day? So there's only 7% of the population that said they watch zero. So most people are watching some TV. So if you look in the red, there's 9%, about 10% of people are spending more than 6 hours a day watching TV. Then there's 13% spending 4 to 6 hours watching TV. So if you put those two together, about a quarter of the population spends, 4 hours or more watching TV each day, right? That kind of seems crazy. I watch TV, but that seems like a lot, right? And then you get up to 2 and 4 hours, 28%. So you've got half the people watching TV for at least 2 hours a day, right? So this is something that we spend, Americans, is a lot of time, and I'm sure we spend time too, right? Watching TV. So next slide, which I have the clicker, I don't know why I'm saying that. I wanted to start first with asking ourselves, what is good and bad about digital entertainment? And all my slides are pretty boring, so I decided at least this one I had a little room, so I'd put a picture up there of a cat saying, when you want to get in shape for summer, but life is hard, right? So it's a heavy, yep. That's Sentiment's cat. Is it? Is that your cat? I saw some laughter over here. I wasn't quite sure. Okay. Well, wonderful. I'm glad she could start today in part of class. So when we talk about digital entertainment and what's good and bad, it seems like, first of all, it's very easy for me to come up with a list of things I don't like. So I thought this morning we would start on the good side, and let's see if we can come up with some good things, and then we'll spend some time talking about bad things. So when it talk about TV, what are some good things about TV? What's that? Information and news. Okay, yep. So it's a way to find out what's happening. News and information. I don't know if this quite fits, but the thing I often think about is there's a lot of things I don't know how to do, but sometimes I can go to YouTube and find a video right away, and I can all of a sudden become enough of an expert to fix something and be dangerous. So information and teaches us. Yep. Yep. So anything that you, yeah, so YouTube, TikTok, TV, all of those. Anything that you're spending time passively watching. So any of those will work. Yeah. What was that? Yep, create TV. Yep. I'm sorry? Unwind. Yep. For the weather. Yep. Know whether to take your umbrella today? Maybe. Comedy. What was yours? Okay. Oh, okay. You're sneaking in the music, but with the TV. You got it. Right. Right. Dixie said comedy sometimes. Spiritual growth. There are things out there for spiritual growth. We can look up different sermons, different preachers. There are channels that we can watch. Is there anything else that's good about digital media? Yes, Grace. Okay. You might watch a show on something that you hadn't really thought about before, and maybe it gives you an opportunity to think about, is this something about it? Right. Right. Yeah. Very good. Anything else? What's good about TV? I think another thing I don't watch as much of is more of the documentaries, History Channel, things like that. You can learn a lot about history. So there's some good things. Educational. It goes under that kind of umbrella. Right. Yep. You like cowboy shows? All right. Yeah. Okay. So we'll switch and let's talk about the bad. What's the bad about TV? What's that? Time consuming. Absolutely. We just saw the chart, right? And I could fall into that too. You sit down and you think 5 minutes passed and you look up and it was a half hour, right? Like, oh my goodness. So, yeah, time consuming. What else? Bad. Right. So it seems like anything goes now. Yeah. Sorry? Yep. Public perception and expectations. Can you give me a little more on that? What do you? Right. Okay. Thank you. James? Yeah. Right. Right. Yep. Absolutely. Sometimes we can be watching something, all of a sudden we realize there's a line that's been crossed, and you weren't ready for that to occur, ready for that to happen, and you got to another. Yeah.
Sometimes when I watch news, I think when it comes to Charlottesville, they tend to more talk about all the bad.
Yeah.
You never hear the good things that happen or good things that people do.
Right.
It's always the bad.
Yeah. So the bad things usually tend to sell. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
so they think people will come watch the news if we highlight the bad. Same with TV shows sometimes. They're highlighting the bad, right? Any other, Grace? Right. Yeah, we're talking about the news being helpful, but now you sometimes don't know, is it actually accurate? Yes. Great way to manipulate society. Okay. A couple more? You want to have a couple more?
Made me look like that cat.
Gaines said it made him look like the cat, if you didn't hear that. TV's to blame. Got it. I love it. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I had a few things that I was going to highlight as I talked to the teenagers. If you have other ideas, certainly you can come up and talk to me. These are wonderful just to hear from you, some of the things that you're seeing as the good and the bad. And then there's going to be other topics I'll talk to them about when it comes to media. So this isn't the only class I'll probably have with them on it. So just to move through these. The one thing I just want to make sure people agree on is that this seems pretty basic, but I've had people argue, right? Well, if I'm watching it, it really doesn't affect me, right? I'm not going to go out and do those things, right? So helping make sure that we all have a baseline that when you're watching something, you're being affected by what you consume. They have the saying about food, you are what you eat. Well, it goes across the board. What you spend time taking in and feeding yourself is going to affect your view on things, So, I've heard people say that, well, if something's very violent, it's not like I'm going to watch a murder and go out and want to commit a murder. Well, look at it this way. If you're watching violence all the time, it's desensitizing you to that. At one point, you may have been very shocked about something like that happening, but if you see a lot of it, and it goes for the news too, we see a lot of it on the news, all of a sudden when you see those things, you're not as shocked by it. It doesn't seem as offensive as it may have at one time, right? So all these things have an effect on us, and God knew that as well. I try to put a verse up there that He tells us in the New Testament, these are the things that you should be thinking on. So I have a verse up there from Philippians 4. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So, this applies to us across our lives and also what we decide to consume. When we're looking at what we're consuming, is it causing anxiety? Is it causing us to think about things we shouldn't be thinking about? Or is it causing us to think about other things that are much better? Is it encouraging us, uplifting us, thinking about God in our lives? So it's one thing I just want to kind of lay that baseline, make sure you understand, and everybody can kind of agree that absolutely what we watch affects us, right? We don't get to just turn the filter on and it doesn't affect us at all. And then I also had a couple verses about, for as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, and let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to your sight. We should guard our hearts and what we're feeding our hearts. So once again, when we're watching things, we're feeding our hearts. So we want to be careful about what we're putting into our heart, because what comes out of our heart should be positive things that's pleasing to God. The second thing is we can become numb to ungodly things, right? What God says is evil is often common and accepted in TV. So if you go, especially if you're watching sitcoms, if you came from another planet and you sat down and you watched American TV to find out what Americans are like, you would think that whenever you go on a date, that ends up with an act of sex afterwards, right? So these things, you see them in TV and in media. what people should expect from dating and from relationships. And all these things are kind of common and accepted a lot of times when you watch these TV shows. And if you keep watching these things, you start to see them as common as well. So we have to be very careful about what we're watching and realize that what we're watching is acts of ungodliness, right? These are things that should not be happening. So I have a couple verses up there. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. Because a lot of times we see people lifting up the bad and condemning the good, right? Especially in our society today. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter, right? So we need to be in tune with God so we know what right is, right? I mean, that's the only way you know what right is if you've studied, if you've learned about what God wants you to do and what's right, and then you can go to wherever you go, whether it's TV or anywhere, and you can make a good judgment about whether this is something I should be spending my time on, right? I also had a passage from Romans 12 about not conforming to the world, right? So I'll also talk about that with them as well, making sure that we're being transformed, how God wants us to be transformed, and not letting the TV transform us or whatever we're spending all our time watching. And a couple more on here. God is often absent from consideration in most TV today. You watch any TV, you don't see people like even considering really morals a lot of time. They're just doing whatever they want, right? So you don't actually go to TV and, you may think of shows that some of you grew up on where there was actually a mention of God or discussion of morals and discussions of what is right or wrong. God may have even been a part of those shows where there was a discussion about him, where you rarely see that today. And in fact, a lot of times when you see some part of God wrapped into a show, it's usually bad in some way. I was reading an article, there was a movie, or I think it was a series that came out recently. It's called The Last of Us. I haven't watched it, but they were talking about how somebody was watching it, and in that show there's a priest that shows up, and he was like, I knew it. Anytime this is what Hollywood does, is usually when there's someone shows up that's kind of a representative for Christianity, they're going to be evil. And this guy ended up being a villain, right? So now not only do you not have God considered, but a lot of times Christianity or something to do with Christianity can be vilified, right? So we do see that quite often in things that we watch. And we also learn about lessons that rarely work out in life. There's in a 30-minute episode, you can have something extreme happen at the beginning of the episode, and by the end, everything's wonderful, right? Sometimes you can watch those shows and know if something like that happened at the beginning, it's going to have consequences for the rest of your life. It doesn't all get wrapped up with a bow, everything's wonderful, and by the end, it's fine. No, all of our actions have effects. They don't always work out like they do in TV, and it kind of gives us that unrealistic expectations about even relationships too, how relationships work out. I watch TV shows, and the man's usually very charming and extremely romantic. So I have to be careful about what my wife watches because she'll have an expectation of me that I'm not going to be able to fulfill. So there are things that it kind of makes you think about what's normal, right? What you should expect from a relationship or from a person or from a situation. And they're very unrealistic, right? They're kind of feeding us fairy tales. Is what you're watching pleasing to God? And one of the things I want to finish with talking with the teens, and I thought about putting, what would Jesus do? But really the concept is, think about it. If you're watching something and he is there with you, because he is, would that be okay? One of the phrases, coram Deo, is a Latin phrase that talks about in the presence of God. Living your life in a way that you're living the presence, under God, under his authority, and you're doing everything to honor him, right? So living your life that way. So think about when you're watching whatever you're watching, is it something that he would be okay with? And are you living the way that he would want you to, right? So 1 John, having there talking about anyone who claims to live in Jesus will walk how Jesus walked. We study about Jesus and what he taught. We should be walking the way he walked. And we need to continue to fight the good fight and have a good conscience. So when you're watching something and something goes off in your head and you're like, I probably shouldn't be watching this, don't keep going, right? Keep that good conscience. Be able to turn it off, be able to not watch it. And also, when you're not doing these things, this will be opportunities for you to talk to other people about what you believe. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the show that was very popular, Game of Thrones. It was, in my opinion, a horrible show. I think probably every other episode, from what I read, had some form of what I would consider pornography, nudity, a lot of nudity in it. But it was the one that when you came to work on Monday, everybody asked you if you saw it. So it was one of those that was very popular, right? Everybody's like, "Did you see the episode? What'd you think?" But it was not good. But it did give me opportunities when people would ask me, "Did you see it?" And I'd say no. And I said, "Don't you watch it?" I'd say no. I get to say why. I don't think I should be, watching that type of stuff. That's not okay, I think, for to be on TV, and why. So sometimes it gives us opportunities, right? It gives the teenagers opportunities too, to talk to people about what's okay and what's not, and why we're making the choices we make. Yeah, Clark.
When my sons were living in the house, I used the parental controls on the cable TV, and we had to have a pass, or you couldn't watch R-rated or whatever.
Right.
And it's been 9 years after they moved out of the house, I just left them on, because then I would stop and say, well, since you have to do it, you have to enter a password. So I thought, well, wait a minute, why am I watching this?
Right.
It's not just about kids.
It's not. Yep, it's a good lesson for us, absolutely, to think about it. Yep.
And I think that it's funny, Aaron would tell you he hates watching TV with me now because every 2 minutes I have to literally verbalize and say, "That's crazy," or "I can't believe that's on TV," or because it's gotten that bad and
Yeah.
that commonplace.
Yep.
And
You need to reject it,
right.
not accept it.
And
Yeah.
even he
Yep.
might tell you, well, what it is, what not it is what it is, but like, okay, yeah. Well, I keep saying it.
Yeah.
Because if the kids are in the room, I feel like if I don't say it, they're already being told in public school it's okay.
Right.
They're already getting that, so it's almost like a fight to stay on top of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's tough. It's absolutely tough. Because they have far more access than I ever had, right? My parents could monitor me a lot better than I can monitor my kids now. Because even though I think I've got technology under control, really, if they want to get to it, they can figure a workaround, right? They can figure it out before I can keep them. So it's got to be lots of conversations, right? So, and keep hitting them up again and again. Yeah, well, it's a great show. It's a great show. Yeah, and I think of the how things, you have the example of how things have changed. What was the show that, where they used to have the roles on TV, the man and the wife couldn't be in bed together? And what was the show where they had separate beds? It was old. I Love Lucy. Yeah, yeah. Leave it. All of those, right? You couldn't even show that. Right, and now, whew, yes, it's changed. Did. I remember that. The national anthem or the Statue of Liberty, whatever they used to put it. Yeah. Yeah. Not anymore. You can watch it 24/7, hundreds of choices, anytime, anywhere. Yeah. YouTube, anything. At your fingertips. Yeah. Yeah. They want your time. They want your attention. Right? I appreciate all the conversation and the comments. So I'm sure it'll be a good conversation with the teenagers. I'll get to hear what they say to me about what they watch and their perspectives. And then as the parents I have in here, if you have anything else you want to add to what I might say, you can let me know. But thank you all for your comments. We'll be starting lunch here in a little bit, but take an opportunity to talk to Emily and Grace and sign the picture if you get a chance. Thank you.